Hey, it's Dr. Brett, and Halloween's coming up, and it's a really fun holiday, especially as an astronomer. We go outside at night and use light to see in the evening. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is creating an astronomy-themed jack-o'-lantern. Now, obviously, you need a few things to do this. You do need some sort of pumpkin, which I've already bought. Now, I'm going to make one on the James Webb Space Telescope. And there's a bunch of these cutouts that you can get, and check out the link in the video. I chose kind of a medium difficulty one, so depending on your skills of carving, you may go easier or harder. You also need some sort of skewer or pin or toothpick to kind of poke out the design, scissors to cut out the design, and tape, because we're going to tape this design to the pumpkin. And you do need a knife and some sort of scoop to get out the insides. I've always viewed it as brains in a jack-o'-lantern. So we're going to show you how to do this and hopefully create one awesome space telescope-looking jack-o'-lantern.
The James Webb Space Telescope, launched a year and a half ago, is everyone's new favorite shiny space telescope.
So the first step is really to trim the design out. And so the way to do this is just to trim a border around the design, enough that you leave a gap so you can stick it and tape it to the pumpkin, but obviously not too much so you don't have a lot of excess paper. So hopefully your skills in kindergarten have come into light, and you're able to just slightly trim the design out. The edge doesn't need to be perfect. It just, again, needs to be good enough so that you can cut and fold and then stick it to the pumpkin. So you want a little wiggle room, but not too much wiggle room such that there's a gigantic piece of paper on the pumpkin. So that's really all you need to do. Now, we're actually just going to move this aside because before we really start doing the design is we have to get our pumpkin ready. Now, to get the pumpkin ready, if you've never done this before, is you're going to cut into the top and you're essentially going to create a lid. You're not throwing that part off. We're going to create the lid that we set off to the side and then scoop the insides out of it. It's kind of the grossy, stinky, boring part, but the critical part to eventually making the jack-o'-lantern to work. Now, you kind of, again, remember, you want a large enough lid so you can actually get into it. And enough that you can scoop it all out. Now, obviously, you are using a sharp knife, be careful, and because it is a sharp knife, not really suitable for the kids. The later parts are definitely where they can help design and poke holes into the side of the pumpkin, but for this part, you really just gotta dig in dirty, do it carefully, as my wife would say, be careful so I don't lose a finger, because I've grown attached to my fingers. Now, we're almost there. We're just gonna start to finish it. And hopefully I've now gone all the way through, and now I have my lid of my pumpkin. So sometimes you have to wiggle it. I'll go a little bit more. Here we go. And voila, here is our lid. Now again, don't throw this away. Eventually you'll need it. So now really the next part is getting the bowl and just obviously getting the innards going. I'll trim the excess stuff on the top. Now, after you've trimmed the top and you're just scooping out the insides obviously are stuff kids can help with. My kids love doing it. They really do it for 10 minutes and then let me do the rest because it does get boring and a little bit repetitive. So with luckily the magic of YouTube, we're going to speed this process up so that you don't have to watch me carving and cleaning out a pumpkin for the next X minutes.
Don't throw the seeds away necessarily. There's a few things you can do with them. I've roasted them or toasted them in the oven before, and they're pretty good. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's also the perfect time of the year to plant them. So you can put them in the ground and potentially have your own crop of jack-o'-lantern pumpkins to be carved in the future.
So now that our pumpkin is kind of gutted and emptied, now it's about sticking the design on. So firstly, you really want to find the flattest part of the pumpkin. Obviously, if you have a nice round surface, it's going to make it tricky to put this on. So try and choose the smoothest or flattest side, which appears to be that side of the pumpkin. Now, the other trick with this design is you want to slightly cut it at the corners, not too much, but just enough to give you a little bit of extra wiggle room so that you can cut it and attach it to the sides of your pumpkin. So this part really is just going to be a bit fidgety, is you're trying to get your design on as best as you can. So you may need to adjust the cuts. You may need to make the cuts a little bit deeper, obviously not too deep. You may need to add one or two in, but the goal here is to get it as smooth and flat as possible. This is where obviously your tape will come in handy, is to tape it and get it into its positions so that you can obviously easily do the design in a few minutes. So that's okay on the top, go on side. And this is again the point of choosing the flattest spot possible. Will eventually make your life as easier for this as you can. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a medium difficulty one. There are other difficulties in the scale that you can do. It's not really just this. So depending on, maybe your pumpkin shape, your skill with carving, your practice with it, or your patience, it all is a bit of fun. Yeah, so it is just a bit finicky sometimes to get it in. And again, it's tape and patience and pressing it in. And that's where leaving that border around the design was best, so that you can get a little bit more wiggle room to get it. So these spots where eventually we're going to carve are the best you can do. Probably a little bit more down there, and then I think we're going to be ready to go with the next step. And the next step is actually starting to get to the fun step. We're actually starting to get into the design of putting the space telescope on our jack-o'-lantern. So there we go. Now that we got our design on, we really want to start poking these holes through. Now I'm going to start with the skewer just to show you what's going on, and then I'm eventually going to swap to a pin A to speed it up. But with the skewer, what you're doing is you're poking a hole in these dots. Now the depth doesn't matter too much. If it goes all the way through, so be it. And it's enough that we poke it to the dots so that we get the design out. Now, as I said, I'm going to swap to a pin because it'll be quicker. And also we want smaller holes because that will make the design more effective. And we're going to speed it up along the way. Yeah, so you can kind of sometimes get in a groove and hopefully speed it up, maybe not as fast as the video. Now that you've done all the patterns, noting this one is specifically supposed to be left solid, you're not doing anything with that, you can now take the pattern design off to transfer it off, and hopefully what you should see is these little pin pricks or toothpick pricks all around with your design so that you can see where you're going to carve. Now, you could be like me and just kind of rip it off. And if you look closely at your pumpkin, you should see a whole bunch of little holes matching the pattern that you just put in. Now we're kind of getting to the home stretch, but again, it's another part where we need to be careful and slow, because if you mess it up, the design will be messed up and then you may have to start all over again. So the trick here is to go from corner to corner. You don't want to extend. You want to keep the design straight and to corner to corner. If you go beyond it, the light will shine through and then it won't look like the mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope. So be slow, take your time, and it's obviously not a thing that the kids should be allowed to do. So again, if you just carefully go to it, and in the first instance of cutting it, it doesn't matter about the depth. You really, again, are trying to chase that design out, and you can go back, make it a little deeper, and cut them out. And as you're going corner to corner, the other trick is you don't want to round or turn the corners. You want to go straight corner to corner to keep that edge going. Now, what I'm going to do now, as I'm obviously getting into the point of cutting, is I'm going to roll it towards me so I can see better what I'm doing, so my design comes out well, and I don't lose a finger. So we've gotten the first one all the way through. Now, and if you just slightly push it from the back, ta-da, you don't need that part anymore. And you have your first James Webb Space Telescope mirror. We can neaten up a little bit afterwards. So one down, 15 more to go. Now I'm just finishing the last one, and to be honest, I took a slight break. It is trying to be slow and steady, especially you may notice that the honeycombs become a little bit weaker as you go. And again, remember, not too deep, just slowly wiggling the knife around just to get the skin out, and then use your finger to wiggle it out. Ta-da! We have now one mostly carved James Webb Space Telescope mirror. Now we're not quite done yet. As you notice, there's still some of the skin and fluffy bits around. So you're really just gonna go through and just carefully trim the inside just to remove some of those so that when the light shines through, it's nice and even and smooth. So you just wanna work around each of the mirrors and get it done. Now, hopefully, like me, you've just finished getting all those little flaky bits out. Again, remember you can pull them from the inside, and don't forget to empty them in the bowl, that bowl where you scooped out all the innards. Hopefully, like me, you've got the bonus point where you have all of your fingers. A reminder, please, if you're doing this with a kid, you have to do the cutting yourself. Allow them to do some of the prickling of the pattern. But they can also help with this last stage, which is the most entertaining, and that is getting the candle set up inside the pumpkin to turn it into your space telescope jack-o'-lantern.
Thanks for watching. If any of you make your own James Webb Space Telescope jack-o'-lanterns, please share it with me on Facebook. And make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube to stay up to date with space.